Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our online training session. This one on auto bank reconciliation. A warm welcome to you all this morning. We've also got Stephen Bedford and Pamela Chi with us today. If this is your first session that you've been to from our series, this is an online seminar that we're providing free to our loyal customers. And in the format of this session, questions will be taken throughout using the Q&A panel. And where applicable, these will be covered at the end of the seminar. We can't see you or hear you, so please give it a try and say hello on the Q&A. If you're having any issues, please send us a message via the Q&A panel. There should be a button in the top right-hand corner of your screen to open the Q&A panel. If it's not visible, try exiting from the full screen mode. All right, so I'm not sure that we've got everybody who'd signed up at this stage, but let's flick over to the Nexus screen and get started. Yes, we're right to go, guys. Okay, so welcome to Nexus 10. For those people that may not have it at this stage, the program that we're talking about here is explicitly for Nexus 10, but once you're on Nexus 10, you can be up and running with this bank reconciliation function quite quickly. All right, the auto bank statement reconciliation program is designed to facilitate the importing of bank statement entries and matching those and or creating those transactions into the bank statement for doing a reconciliation. All right. So in the past, this has been the common screen that we've used for doing our bank rec. And what you'll find is that this program works basically the same as this, but goes a little bit further. All right. And you can use this new program in conjunction with this one as well. All right. So the auto bank program can be used for a particular bank, whereas another bank you may still do using this existing program, or by operator you can vary who uses which of these two programs. All right. The original program obviously doesn't have as much functionality as this new one does. All right, so we'll launch into the new one and let's have a look at it. All right, so this is our automatic bank reconciliation program. And basically the idea of it is that it reads a file from your banking institution and helps you in terms of doing that reconciliation process. All right, and so you can see that the layout of the screen is similar to the existing program in that we're selecting the bank, the opening balance, the closing balance, the dates for it, and then it's keeping track of the presented balance and ultimately the difference, because our aim there is to get down to a difference of 0 that we've reconciled. All right. All right, so in terms of this program, it can be used with all sorts of different banking institutions, but the main requirement is that we get a consistent file from your banking institution. All right. So what might be the file structure for the NAB might be slightly different for the ANZ, but our program allows for those differences. And once you've established what the setup is for your particular bank, then you just continue to work with that. So in terms of the file that you may receive from your banking institution, it might be something like this one. This one's in a NAB format, all right, it's in a CSV format, and basically you can see that there's a number of columns here where it's sort of giving us a date and a description and some amounts, but it will be easier to see once we get into the actual screens. All right, so that's what we're sort of looking for as a consistent file to import into this, and that becomes the basis of us doing the bank reconciliation. So how do we set this up? Well, basically we've got two areas that we need to set up. first of all, and once we've done this the first time, then we don't need to really go back and do this each time, is that we map that CSV file. And the whole idea of this is that basically we're saying in here, how many columns are there in our file? And do any of those columns match up to these pieces of information? In terms of a particular bank's CSV file, we may not have all of these columns in there. All right. For example, the narrative code, the currency code may not actually exist in your file. That's okay. If it doesn't exist, we just leave it as a 0 and it doesn't expect that to be there. All right. If we have more columns than we're actually using, that's okay, because we nominate how many columns there are in the file. So let's have a look at one that I've defined previously that works with this particular CSV file. All right, and you can see there that you can have multiple mappings for different banks. All right, and at this stage, we haven't associated this with a particular Nexus bank. We're just saying that this is coming from the NAB financial institution. All right, so their structure has 8 columns to it. All right, and there are headings at the top. That's what we're on about there. So you can see in this file there that there's some headings at the top before it gets into the actual data. All right, and then we're sort of saying, okay, when we're looking at the data, all right, what order are things in? All right, and so we're saying that the narrative is the second thing on the line, then the transaction date is the 4th thing. The currency code does exist in the case of this one, that's the 5th. The debit amount is the 6th, the credit amount is the 7th, sort of thing. There is an 8th column there, right? Because I said there was 8 columns in our file, but we're not actually using that. And the columns that we don't have, like an account number on each line, we just set that to 0. All right. Depending on the structure of the file, we may need to play around with some of these other options, like whether the debit amount is a negative and the credit is a positive, all right, depending on the structure of the particular file from the bank. All right, you may need to tick those. In the case of those, we do. All right, and also you can use these text boxes down here to help identify check payments, so where you're paying suppliers, and deposits. All right, so that it recognises those as receipts coming in. All right. Also, in terms of some of the narratives, sometimes the narratives or the text that describes what's coming in has extra text in it that may not be necessary to really look closely at. Like here, you can see this interbank credit is being repeated on a lot of lines. All right. We can ignore that text by basically putting it in there and saying, all right, as part of the narrative, just ignore that. All right. So once we've set up that structure for a particular banking institution, our next step is that we go and assign it to a particular Nexus bank. All right. So the same structure can be matched to multiple banks in Nexus or just one. All right. But basically we go, here's our bank account in Nexus, and we're going to use this NAB bank mapping, as I've called it there, and we save that. Save CSV mapping. All right. So hopefully once you've set that up once, you wouldn't need to go back into there again, and it will just work from there on. Now, you can see here in the middle of the screen here that it has a bit of a legend, different colors that it will use as we import that CSV file in to identify what it's been able to match, not match, or where there's duplicates. These colors can be maintained on a user by user basis through these preferences. All right. And so basically go into here and choose the color that you want for each one of those, and that will be maintained on a per user basis. All right, so if you've got several operators using this, they can have their own color scheme that suits them. All right, so once we've done that setup work, we're ready to go in and use this. All right, bear with me for a moment. Okay, so basically to use it, what we do is that we come along and we select our Nexus bank account. All right, so we'll go our main operating bank account. All right, and the same as our existing bank reconciliation program, it then comes up with an opening balance and opening date as it remembers from the last time that the bank was reconciled. All right, and then we can enter our closing balance as per our bank statement. So just do that. All right, and the date. All right. Now, similar to the existing program, you can put a statement reference in. All right, and this is useful as well because what we can actually do is that we can work on a bank reconciliation and then save it, which I'll show you in a moment, and come back to it. So, you know, somebody says, hey, let's go get a coffee in the middle of this, you can save it and come back to it. All right. So we'll put a statement reference in there, and you can see now that because we've put our balances in, it says, okay, at this stage, you've got a difference of nearly $9,000 that we need to sort out before you can say we've reconciled. So our next step is we hit this load new to bring in that CSV file. All right. So each day or each week as we're doing this, obviously we would have a new CSV file that's come from our banking software. All right. And that can be anywhere on your network, and basically just open her up and it will go through and load it. All right. So what it's done here is that it's done a little bit of color, and basically it's assessed each line as it's loaded it and seen whether it can match it to something that it already knows in Nexus. All right. So the green lines, they're good. That means that it's attempted and found a match for them. The blue ones, we've got to do some more work on because it couldn't find a match for them at this stage. It just maybe needs a little bit of help with that. The yellow, it was so good that it actually found multiple transactions that could be this entry that's on your bank statement, and we need to identify which ones is which. And the red we'll see happen shortly as we go through these, where there might be, we're presenting it for an incorrect amount. Okay, so first of all, as we're working away, we can go and save our session. All right, and oh, sorry, cancel. Save our session. I meant to hit up here and save this session. And that means that we can exit this program and come back to it, and it will remember where we're up to. And we can come back in, and rather than loading a new file, we would load a saved one. All right, and it asks us for the name of it, basically, which will be this statement reference that we gave here. So it will remember all of these details, and it will just allow us to pick up from where we left off in terms of that reconciliation process. An important thing to know is that while we're doing this reconciliation and we're in this program, even though it says, hey, I've matched this and I've matched that, it hasn't actually made any changes to Nexus at this point in time. All right. While we're working in this program, it's just self-contained. All right. And only when we are satisfied that we've resolved the difference, and you can see here, because of those matches, the difference has changed from the original 9,000 that we had, that when we get that difference down to 0, we can do what's known as an apply, and I'll show you that later. And at that point, we'll let go and update what's happened into Nexus. All right, so that's where this program is fantastic, because we can work on it independent of what's going on in Nexus at the moment, and when we're satisfied with it, then apply it. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at some of these transactions that we've had come in from our bank statement. All right, and the first thing I like to do is just, because some of these narratives are a bit longer than the standard ones, you can expand out the screen and give yourself a bit more space to see that whole narrative or the description there. All right, so the first 3 lines, it's done a match on, but let's have a look at how it's done that match. All right, so the first line, it says transfer credits online, some sort of number, Acme, Spice of Life. All right, and it says, well, I've matched that to this debtor code. See the debtor code there, AA 00053. We come up with some really good debtor codes in our system. But yeah, that's matched to a debtor code, but how has it matched? Well, if we go in and we click on that hyperlink there, it tells us that it's matched, and it's going to put this direct debit that's gone into our bank account against this customer account. All right, and it's actually going to create the receipt for us. All right, the process. This is actually going to create the receipt for us. All right, how it's actually done it is that it's matched it on a system tag. So, because you can't see the debtor code or an invoice number reference in that one at all. All right, but if we go up to here, this little speed button here, all right, before we started this bank rec today, I actually set up a little tag against a debtor that says, hey, if you see this text, Spice of Life, against a narrative in the bank statement, that means this account. All right, and so that text can be anything that we like. And so if we just get that out of the way, you can see that Spice of Life, that text string was there, and that's how it identified that this direct deposit relates to this particular debtor account. So there was no mention of the debtor code or the debtor name there, but it still managed to find a match. All right, and in this screen, the other thing that we can do is that we can go into this manual apply to invoices, and we can choose which invoices we actually want to apply this to just by ticking them. And if we have a change of heart, we can untick it, and we can go down here and go those ones. All right, maybe all. All right. Oh, look, still got 30 cents left. Yeah. So you can sit there and say which invoices you want to apply to. All right. You can choose to just create the receipt and leave it unapplied. All right, or you can apply it as part of the process. So what it's doing here is that it's just showing you what transactions are outstanding on this debtor's account at the moment. All right, so we'll save that, save that journal. All right, and it tells us here that of that $500 that's come in, we've applied it, we've matched it to $500 worth of invoices. All right, so let's have a look at the next line now. All right, and Interbank Credit, Poets Cafe, Guile Investments, Acme Enterprise. All right, but it's matched to this account, FE00282. All right, if we have a look, all right, so it's matched it to Fantasy Buick, and if we go over to our debtor's master, just to have a look, again, you know, there was no reference to the debtor code or anything in there, but what it's actually managed to match on is the legal entity here on the second screen. All right, so it will look for that legal entity as well when it's loading up the CSV file to see whether it can match to a particular debtor account. Oops, okay, let's go back into our screen again. All right, so here, basically the same sort of thing, you know, that it's matched to that debtor, all right, for that amount. All right, if we're feeling so inclined, we can actually just tick this box to apply that receipt to the oldest invoice and keep going until that receipt is exhausted, rather than necessarily having to go into the manually apply. All right, so on a transaction by transaction, you can choose whether to go in and manually apply it to the oldest invoices, or leave it unapplied on the account, that it will just create the receipt and leave it there without being applied. All right, so we'll save that. All right, save journal. All right, let's have a look at the next one. So the next one, all right, it has matched, but see how it's got an invoice number here as a reference? Just trust me, that's an invoice number. All right, And that means that it's actually found an invoice number reference somewhere in the narrative. Now that invoice number reference, it doesn't have to have a space either side of it or whatever. It's just looking for the string of an invoice number that is still outstanding in Nexus. All right. If they quote an invoice number that isn't outstanding, then it won't match. But if it matches on an invoice number that's outstanding, what it will actually do is obviously identify the customer, but also if we have a look at the manual apply, you'll see that it's already selected that invoice. All right, so it's where it matches on an invoice number, it will automatically apply it for you. All right, because the customer's told you, hey, that's the invoice I want to pay. So make it easy for ourselves. All right, save that. All right. So where it's saved by invoice, we don't actually even need to go into it. We can check it if we want to, all right, but we don't actually have to go into it. So looking at the fourth line now, State Revenue Office, all right, one of our favourite government institutions. And in the case of this one, it's saying it's unmatched. All right, so it was in the colour blue and it's unmatched. Now, this is a payment, all right, so it's likely to already exist in our bank statement, all right? And so we probably don't need to create the transaction in this case, all right, because we would have already made the payment, but now here it is being presented. So what we do with this one is that we click the Find button. Let's go find it, all right? And so what this screen is doing is that it's showing us all the things that are unpresented on our bank statement screen, all right? So similar to the original program. All right, and basically here we can go looking for it and find it. Now we can find it using one of these filters, all right, and maybe we go by amount, all right, and we can find it. So what did we say it was? The 2,832 and 23 cents, all right, and filter. Did I not get that right? Filter off. Thought I did. But there's our amount there, happened to be the oldest one. So basically we just tick it and save it, save selection. All right, and so that one now changes to matched, and you can see that our difference is changing as we're going along. Okay, so moving on to the next one. The next one is from EasyPay. All right, and this is the sort of entry you might have if you start using Nexus Pay or any of those functionality that we've added to Nexus 10, where it facilitates the collecting of payments from credit cards or you know, making direct payments off transactions. And in the case of this, we need to find the transactions to match this to, but this is a deposit. All right, so when we go find this time, all right, it's showing us all the receipt transactions rather than the expense transactions that we saw in the previous one. All right, so we can again use the filter, and I'm going to filter by date because these all relate to a particular date. All right, so 12th of the 5th. All right, and filter. All right, and you can see that we're down to just that date now. All right, and these columns, you can sort them however whatever sequence you like, just by clicking on the column, you know, first, whatever, all right, to help you identify them. But basically, as you identify them, go along, tick, tick, tick. All right, and as you're ticking them, it's saying how much you've matched and what you've still got to match. All right, and so we'll just go tick, 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 tick. And hopefully, as they say in the classics, here's one I prepared earlier. All right, and oh, hang on a moment. I didn't have enough I didn't have enough money come into the bank today to actually select all of the receipts. So you can see this one has been short, all right? And the reason is in the case of this EasyPay, there are fees that are taken out. So yes, we collected the $25.09, but with some fees. All right, so I can select that. All right, and what will happen now is that it says, hey, hang on a minute. All right, you selected $116 worth of transactions, but it doesn't match the 102. All right, and that's because there is a fee that we need to create a journal for the difference. All right, and so we can do that as part of this transaction now. So all we do is that we go create, and it asks us for the dissection and easy pay merchant fees. All right, and select that, save that, save the dissection. All right, and what you'll find now is that that one comes up in red, right? Just so that it identifies that we actually applied that to more than what the deposit actually was, but we did a journal to counteract that difference. All right, so that's where that red incorrect one as such comes from. All right, but you can see that it's matched, it's okay. All right, and so we'll move on to the next one. Now, the next one was our yellow duplicates. All right, that there was multiple transactions that it found a match on. All right, so it found a match based on the date and the amount of this transaction and found 2 expense transactions that were already in our bank statement that matched. All right, so it's just waiting for us to select which one is the appropriate one. All right, so we can just select that. All right, so it's not showing us all the expenses, it's just showing us the ones that match that criteria of the date and the amount. Save that selection. And next, all right, so we're on to this payment here. Now, it's basically done this one for us already. All right, and we can see that it matched it to our craft account, that was a creditor payment that we made by EFT. All right, and it was able to again match that on date and amount, sort of thing. So nothing that we need to do there. That was a good thing. All right, so we're down to this unmatched one now. All right, and again, it's a deposit into our bank, but it hasn't seen a debtor code in the description or a legal entity. It hasn't seen a previous tag that we've created for some text in there. So let's go have a look at this, right? So it's, oops, sorry, unmatched. So we're going to go post that to somebody's account, right? We know that that's a customer, and here on my desk, I've got a remittance advice for that. I'm really lucky. So I'm going to put in the debtor code that's for, and it is actually for American Pie. All right, and same as when you're doing a receipt at the moment in Nexus, in the cash receipts entry program, all right, you get to put a reference and a description in, however you want to put that in as. All right, and then you've got the choice of whether you just apply it to the oldest invoices or untick that and manually apply it to the invoices. Right, but the other thing that we can do at this point as well is that because there was nothing in there to really identify this customer, right, we can set up a tag so that next time we will recognize this. All right. All right, so the way that we can do that is that we hit on this icon up the top here, maintain tag, and by default what it's doing is that it's bringing across the whole narrative that's on this receipt at the moment, and then we can manipulate that down to whatever text we like, all right, and to make that a unique identifier so that next time it recognizes that as being from that customer account. All right, so similar to how the Spice of Life one was set up, all right, we're creating a tag against the American Pie Company that says if you see the letters T Jimmy anywhere in a narrative entry, then assign it to this account. All right. Now the idea is with these tags is that we keep the text fairly short and concise, rather than having a great long sentence. You can have a great long sentence, but you may find that you then cross over with other accounts. Right? So And you can maintain these from debtors master maintenance as well. So it's not just here that you can maintain them, but in debtors master maintenance, there is an F2 option where you can maintain them separate to this program. All right, so when we're satisfied with that, all right, we'll save that tag, and that tag will take effect next time that we're importing in a CSV file. That if it sees T Jimmy, it will go, yes, that's the American Pie Company paying us money. All right, so we'll save that. All right, so the next one is another EFT payment that we've made, and you can see that it's matched that for us based on the date and the amount. All right, and then we are down to this one for Fred Stokes. All right, and what we can do in here this time is that, right, again, it's matched on the debtor code because it has seen the debtor code in the narrative, and so we can tick, tick, tick and apply it to everything there, or we can be lazy and use this select all option at the top here and do that nice and quick. All right, and save that. All right, and next one. All right, again, it has matched it. It has matched it on the basis of an invoice number. All right, so it's told us that it sees an invoice number, but let's just go and check the apply because the invoice that it actually wanted to apply to, and you can see that it's ticked there, it hasn't paid off the full amount of the invoice because the invoice was actually $272, but they're paying us $238, and that's probably because they're taking up a credit. So through this process, we can actually take up credits so that the apply is correct. And the best way to do that is like in the cash receipt entry program, where we select the credits first, all right, and then select the invoices that we're applying it to. And now you can see that that invoice has been fully applied, and so has that credit note. All right, and so we can save that. All right, save that journal. Getting close, guys. We're almost down to a difference of 0. Almost. Let's have a look at our last transaction here, bank fees. So this is a common transaction that we would see where it doesn't necessarily exist in our bank statement at the moment, but we need to create an entry for it, right? So basically we can go post, right, create as a transaction. Now this would be a cash book only entry, so we'll leave that tick on for cash book only, all right? And we get to nominate the date, the reference, all of those sorts of things, right? So we might go, okay, the reference is 16.9, right, it's bank fees, is the description. It wants to know our dissection. Again, we can do a lookup or we can type it in if we know it. All right, and then we have the option as to whether it's a taxable item or not, right? So a little tick box where we can say it's taxable or not taxable. In the case of bank fees, it's not taxable. All right, and that's as good as creating a cash book only entry. All right, so we can save that. So the good news is we've come down to a difference of 0. That means we reconcile. Yay. All right. Now, the next thing that we may want to do is actually print ourselves a reconciliation report. All right. So similar to what you get out of the existing program, all right, in that it will list the presented checks, the unpresented checks, any adjustments that have been made, and get us down to our statement summary sort of thing. All right. The only thing to be aware of is that here we're combining information of what transactions we've done here in this auto bank reconciliation program, and also those ones that are already in our bank statement. All right, so the little Y here is saying that this is a proposed transaction. Because remember, we're still in this auto bank rec. We haven't actually pushed anything into Nexus as yet. So if we were to run a bank statement and reconciliation report, the standard one, out of Nexus right now, or somebody else was to do it, they wouldn't see these transactions because they only exist here at the moment in this auto bank reconciliation program. So that's why there's that Y against them, that they're only proposed. Whereas these are unpresented checks that aren't proposed, they're actually in Nexus, right? That we would see them in our bank statement at the moment. All right, so we can run that report, we can save that report to Excel, we can print it, we can do whatever we like with that report, and we can use that report as much as we need to during this reconciliation process. All right, so basically now that we're down to a difference of 0, all right, we could save this and go to an early lunch, all right. All right, and come back to it later. All right, but basically the only step that we've got left to do is the apply. All right, and basically we click on there, and what the apply does is that it goes and presents all of those items that were in our bank statement that we've said yes, we've matched to. And in terms of the direct deposits, all right, it goes and creates the receipts that we've asked for against those debtor accounts, applies them where we've matched them for applying, and in the case of the easy payment or anything like that, it will go and create that journal for the merchant fees. All right, so that is the reconciliation program in a nutshell. Now I'm going to try and find our Q&A items, and we're open up to any questions. Thank you.